So we want to really proceed very fast. We don't want to waste time. We want to proceed a little very fast. We want to see proximity. I guess you're already familiar with this information.
Yes.
Yeah, so we want to look at proximity. How is proximity really also another principle of graphic design? Of course, we shall look at the definition of proximity and then the importance and a few examples how proximity can be applied to design.
Yes.
So these are still the principles that we keep reminding ourselves. We have contrast, hierarchy, assignment, balance, proximity, which we are looking at today. And then tomorrow we shall look at repetition, simplicity, and then function in the subsequent following day.
Okay.
Yeah, so of course proximity is the fifth key principle in design, following the one we looked at yesterday. By the way, do you remember what we looked at yesterday?
Balance.
We looked at balance. Okay, and you saw how really balance contributes towards the beauty and professionality of your artwork when you are designing. Yeah, right away, proximity in simple terms, it's the what?
Is the grouping and shaping of objects in a composition.
Yeah, so when we talk about proximity, of course, it means we are basically talking about grouping and shaping objects in a composition. Grouping and shaping grouping and shaping of objects in a composition. So what objects are we talking about? We are talking about objects like shapes, objects like pictures, objects like typography, and the rest of the visual elements that we learned. So the order that you choose to use as we are grouping them or as we are shaping them, it is what is going to determine the professionality or the better outlook of your piece of graphic artwork. So we want to concentrate on looking at what are the better ways of doing it. What is the professional way of grouping or shaping objects in graphic design, such that we can be able to reflect that we have been in position to apply a design principle called proximity. So, of course, in design, we use proximity to create connections and also to dispel connections, to create connections and also to remove connections in simple words.
Okay.
Are we together? So proximity, when we apply proximity as one of the design principles, we should be in a position to bring together. We should be in a position to connect different visual elements that we have used in order for us to convey a message. And then the approach that we also use can disconnect the different visual elements. And of course, the moment you disconnect the different visual elements, it means you are trying to discard someone's attention from understanding a certain concept. Okay. So all in all, in design, related elements should be grouped together so that they will be viewed as a group. So your ability or your creativity to bring bring out certain elements which are related together can be portrayed well by the help of a group. If you are, when you are able to bring different elements together, and yet those elements work together, or else they have a certain relationship between them, then that calls for the concept of proximity. So that's what we are saying here, that in design, related elements should be grouped. If you want to talk about related elements, then it's better you should bring them closer, bring them together. Okay? And then if you want to talk about elements which are not related, it's better you disperse them. Don't make them to be closer to each other. Yeah. So it is only related visual elements which should be brought together, and then elements which are not related should be discarded, or they should be put at different locations of your design space. And then that's what we are saying here, that unrelated, those elements which are not related, they should have distance actually between them, and should not be in close proximity to each other. You should not bring them closer to each other, because the moment you bring them closer to each other, people start imagining that possibly they are related, possibly there are things, there are elements which are reflecting the same thing, which would end up confusing the viewer. Get the point? So we are saying audiences will always assume that elements that are not near each other in a design are not closely related. Is that statement true? Does it make sense to you? Aren't your personal experience? Usually when you are looking at different visual elements, when you look at elements which are distant from each other, elements which are not close, or elements which are not near each other, is it true that you also perceive them as elements which are not related?
Yes.
Meanwhile, elements which are nearer each other, you usually assume that they are related. Not so they are speaking about the same concept or the same item. A very good example is let me just look for one that I've ever done. Let me look for one that I've ever done. Then I share. Going to share my screen. Going to share it. Going to share. I'm still trying to get one that fits the example we are talking about. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Let me just bring this. You have ever seen it, please? Do you see this?
Yes.
So with the proximity, we say the related elements should be brought closer to each other. Meanwhile, elements or visual elements which are not related should be put at distant locations of your artwork. So I'll consider this example. Do you see this area here? This area has got names of people and the time each of them is going to speak. So I decided to put them closer to each other because they are all these are this information is speaking about people who are going to do the same thing, but at different intervals of the time. Meanwhile, I couldn't bring this information here. I couldn't bring it here where these names are because these are elements which are communicating very different concepts or very different things. So these are people and this is time, not so. This is the time. These people also have time. So I had to combine the name and the time, not so. But in this other element, we are having a date. Actually, we're having a day of the week, and the time. So these two things are different. So they are not related. That's why I decided to put this way and this one far away from it. So what makes me to be able to do that? It is having the knowledge or the concept of proximity. I want to show that this information here is not related to this. Meanwhile, the different information that I have left inside here is only information that is related. Information speaking about people who are going to do a related task. Are we together?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go back to our class here. So that's what we are trying to communicate from there. So as we continue, we are having some examples. We are having some proximity examples here. You can see sample content in the various layouts. So when I just continue, there is this particular one. It is example one, and we are saying adequate relationships are established in this layout. Elements are in close proximity in a comprehensive order. You realize that there is a picture here of a person. This is an object or this is an element in a design. And then we are having typography just next to it. Because this picture is related to this text, just know that here possibly the name of this picture, the name of the person in this picture is supposed to appear here. So to show proximity, you have to bring this closer. You bring the picture closer to this typography, just to show that the picture that is going to appear here and the name here, they are related. The same applies to this planet picture. You see this picture and the name, the typography which is describing the picture, it is also just nearer to the picture. The same applies to this. This information would be describing this. Are we together?
Yes.
Yeah, this information could be like a quote, but under this picture, it is described. There is a state. There is like a caption which is talking about this. So, with proximity, you realize that however complex the composition may be, you can find the possible ways of creating a relationship, creating a connection. You show connection, you show that this text is connected to this. This one is connected to this. Are we together?
Yes.
Yeah. So in this other one, you can see clear relationships are established in this layout. Elements are in close proximity in a clear order. Still, you can see the picture is down, the caption is up. So that means this caption is connected to this. This caption is connected to this other one. And then this header title is connected. It is also connected to this. So when we are showing proximity, we can show proximity And show proximity, just a minute. Okay, sorry for the breakup. So with proximity, you can actually show connections. You can show how connected different elements are, irrespective of which category of elements you have used. Most of the first example, we're looking at pictures, how you can show their connections with typography. But you see down here, you can also show how typography is connected. So you can see that this here we are supposed to have a heading title or a header title, but that header title has a connection to the subtitle. And then it is also connected to this detailed body or this detailed paragraph here. Are we together?
Yes.
Yeah. So that is what we call proximity. I have another example here. You can see because this now here we are trying to dispel. We are trying to just a minute. So here I was saying we are trying to. Are you there?
Yes.
Yeah, we are trying to dispel. Okay, that's what we are saying here. That elements are scattered in a sporadic layout. No clear relationship between elements in this layout. So here we are trying to show that with the proximity, we can actually dispel or we can disconnect different elements which are not related. So you can see they are really scattered. The pictures are scattered and there is no information which is connected, which is connecting. There is not the typography which is available. It is not connected to any of the pictures which is nearer to it. For example, you see this typography author name. It's not connected to this. Are we together? This word header title, it is also not connected to any information which is nearer it. So because this is a picture and this is a header title, you don't have to bring this header title nearer to this picture because they are not related. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah. So with the proximity, you should be in position to create connections and also disconnect connections. Okay?
Yes.
And then we are saying in design, one should try and avoid the appearance of having made conflicting decisions. You as a designer should always try to avoid someone from discovering that you were a little confused and you failed to make choice of which elements should communicate what and which elements are related. By the way, sober people or professional people, professional graphic designers can tell it. And even people who are not professional designers. Yesterday I showed you an artwork of the other gentleman who is my friend, and you were able to discover that there was something which was lacking. So even you, when you're designing, you should always try to avoid the appearance of your artwork. You know, I told you your artwork communicates on your behalf. It talks. It speaks to someone who is looking at it. So you should always try to avoid someone from identifying weaknesses or errors in your piece of artwork. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Of course, we are saying I've talked a lot. You also read this one.
When visual elements appear randomly and poorly positioned, it is noticeable and can devalue a piece of work if done unintentionally.
Yeah, this one, this statement, you have ever heard it, you have ever seen it in our past. So I believe you understand what it means.
Yes.
What do you understand about it?
When you don't when you don't uh, when you don't when you don't use alignment, when you don't yes, alignment in your work and balance. Okay, use the visual elements in your artwork. It can be noticeable and it leads to poor judgment of your work.
Very good. So the moment you use different visual elements, but you use them poorly, okay? Of course, using them poorly means you are not going to apply the design principles. You are not going to align it. You are not going to balance. You are not going to think to consider the contrast. Trust me, somebody will be able to notice. Just like yesterday, you were able to notice a problem in the other guy's work. You were able to notice it because the guy didn't apply the design principles. Not so.
Yes.
Yeah. So here I have pictures of shapes. There are three shapes. Okay.
Yes.
So remember, I said with a proximity, you can be in position to connect. Be in position to connect objects in order for you to bring to show that they are related and they communicate a meaningful something that you are trying to show to the viewer. So I have these shapes. You see, as of now, they don't show any meaning. They don't show something meaningful as you can see them. But the moment I bring them closer, there's the moment I apply that concept of proximity. So originally they were like that, okay? The moment I apply that concept of proximity, it means I'm going to position them differently. I'm going to bring them closer to each other. And then by me positioning them differently and bringing them closer to each other to show a relationship or to show a connection, I can come up with something meaningful. Have you seen something meaningful coming out of that?
Yes.
So you realize that the three shapes have been positioned differently and a relationship has been created. So there is a connection between the three of them now. And that connection, when you look at the negative space suggests a creation of a new shape, which has been created by the existing three shapes that we had originally, which were looking like that. Okay?
Yes.
So we are able to implement something like this because of the knowledge of proximity. So this is just creativity in cooperation with proximity. So from lack of any connection to having a connection with something reasonable, and trust me, you are seeing something sensible. So what shape do you
Yes.
see? What shape are you seeing? What new shape do you see being formed from with the help of negative space?
Triangle.
Yes, a triangle. So do you see the power of proximity?
Yes.
Yeah. What are we saying there?
When we think of all the symbols and logos we know so well, it's it's though
It is through,
the combination it's through the combination of shapes and proximity that works to imprint images into our memory.
yeah, that this concept of proximity, it also applies on different symbols and logos.
Hmm?
So you realize that sometimes someone has to combine a shape and proximity in order for someone to bring out a proper outlook of a logo. And since that proper outlook has becomes outstanding, it is able to stick into somebody's memory.
Mm.
That's why you are able to, that's why you are able to recognize some of the logos which are existing. For example, you can look at a logo like a logo of Airtel, a logo of MTN. Those logos, somebody applied some shapes and some typography and then proximity. Somebody had to create a certain connection between the different visual elements used on those different logos that you saw. And even here on the screen, you can see these are shapes
Mm.
and there are two shapes. There is a circle one, a circular one, and a rectangular one. Not so.
The first one.
Yeah, the first one, the round one is a circle, and then this other one is rectangular. So when you put them closer to each other because they are related, you come up with a logo. The same applies to this. The same applies to this. Okay, this is a symbol, a question mark. You have to bring this curve and then this round thing. That's how they came up with a question mark. You see this one, these circles here,
Yes.
because they are connected to each other, they bring out something, something uniform, not so. The same applies to the same applies to this dollar symbol. But what if we disorganized those symbols the way you see? Do they really communicate something sensible? Look at this.
Oh.
Look at this question mark. We have
Yes.
disconnected the connection. We have disconnected the relationship. Now we are seeing something which we don't actually understand. Look at this logo, which was, look at this. Now we are seeing something like 0 and 1. Look at this.
Mm.
Look at this. Things have messed up, not so.
Mm.
So when you apply proximity, you are able to come up with something meaningful like what you are seeing here on a logo or on a symbol. Are we together?
Yes.
Okay.
However simple or complex, it's this relationship or lack of relationship between shapes that can trigger feelings, convey messages, engage an audience, and emphasis to a portion of a layout and create dynamics.
I guess you understand that very well. Hmm? That it is, even if your composition is very complex, even if it is just a simple one, it is the relationship or lack of relationship between the shapes
Mm.
that you have used, okay,
Eh,
that can
eh, eh.
trigger feelings. I will just take you back to, I'll take you back to the other shapes. You see this? It's
Mm.
it's the lack of share, the lack of relationships, the lack of relationship between these three shapes And it is also the availability of the relationship between these that triggers your feeling.
Oh, yes.
Okay? So that's what we are saying here, that however simple or complex your artwork may be, it's the relationship of or lack of relationship between the shapes that will trigger the feelings and convey a message which engages an audience and also adds emphasis to a portion of a layout, and it will end up creating a dynamic on your artwork. So most of the time, when you want to communicate, you should be able to, the visual elements that you use on your artwork should be able to come up with a relationship. You should be able to build connections. You should be able to connect one visual element to another as your information keeps on flowing, as the message you are trying to convey to the viewer keeps on flowing. It is that connection, that linkage between one visual element to another, it is what matters. And if you are able to implement it properly, then you have implemented what we call proximity.
Proximity.
Yes. So a good designer like Fatuma should be able to manipulate the spacing and the structure of an element in the composition to apply proximity. Here I'm trying to say you as a designer, you should be in a position to find ways of manipulating, apply creativity, like the creativity that was applied on these. You see, from this we are able to come up with something like that. That is just being creative and applying what we call proximity. Okay, so that's what I expect from a good designer like Fatima. So as far as proximity is concerned, that is the basic knowledge you need to understand. I hope it makes sense to you. Yeah. Do you have any question as far as proximity is concerned?
No.
No question. So it means you have understood everything.
I've understood proximity.
Okay. So I think that will bring us to the end of today's session. Yeah, we shall link up again tomorrow. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for this evening. I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Okay, today no assignment. You can relax, you can just do your personal research.
Okay.
Okay, research. I give you an assignment. Okay, research about the next design principle. You know it.
Pattern. No repetition.
Yes, research about it, and then tomorrow when we are having a session, you should be able to tell me something you read about it.
Okay.
Okay. Have a good evening.
It will help me, Mr. George.
Yes.
Is it okay to send me, like yesterday, tomorrow's notes?
Yeah, I will send them. I will share them, but it may be late in the evening, but I'm going to share them.
Okay.
Okay, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you.